are you?
I am Zordon, an interdimensional being caught in a time warp.
Hello guys, welcome back. Now, if you grew up watching Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, there's one episode that you probably remember immediately. Rita Repulsa escapes from her space dumpster after being imprisoned for 10,000 years. And immediately begins planning to conquer Earth. The situation becomes serious very quickly. Zordon, the ancient interdimensional mentor trapped inside a time warp, realizes that Earth needs a new team of protectors. So, what does he do? Does he contact the military? Does he recruit experienced? Does he look for adult martial artists, scientists, police officers, or trained emergency personnel? No. He tells Alpha 5 to recruit 5 teenagers with attitude. When you're 8 years old, well, that decision doesn't seem strange. Of course, the heroes are teenagers. They attend school, hang out at the youth center, deal with bullies, develop crushes, complete community projects, and somehow save the planet before their parents notice they're missing. But when you revisit the series as an adult, well, Zordon's decision begins to look a little bit more questionable. An ancient cosmic mentor is fighting a sorceress who's threatened entire worlds for thousands of years. Yet, he hands weapons of extraordinary power to 5 high school students who were performing martial arts and gymnastics only minutes earlier. Why teenagers? Why not adults? Why not soldiers? Why not anyone with professional experience in warfare or disaster response? The honest answer is that the original show never completely explains it. There are clues inside the story, plenty of fan interpretations, and one very clear real-world production reason. But those 3 categories shouldn't be confused. So today, we're separating canon from theory and explaining why Zordon chose teenagers to become the original Power Rangers. What Zordon actually said. The famous moment happens in the first episode, Day of the Dumpster. After Rita escapes, Zordon orders Alpha 5 to recruit a team of teenagers with attitude. Alpha selects Jason Lee Scott, Zach Taylor, Kimberly Hart, Billy Cranston, and Trini Kwan. The 5 are teleported from the Angel Grove Youth Center into the Command Center, where Zordon tells them they've been chosen to form an elite team and defend Earth from Rita Repulsa. But here is the important detail. Zordon never explains why their age is necessary. He doesn't say that only teenagers can use the power coins. He doesn't claim that adults are physically incompatible with the morphing grid. He doesn't say that teenagers heal more quickly, possess more energy, or are naturally immune to Rita's magic. He simply asks for teenagers. Alpha brings him 5. That means that there's no single official speech hidden somewhere in the episode that solves the mystery. The phrase, teenagers with attitude, is part of the premise, not a complete explanation of the selection process. The original Rangers did not blindly accept. One popular theory claims that Zordon chose teenagers because they follow orders without asking questions. That doesn't fit what happens in the first episode. When Zordon reveals Rita's return and offers them the morphers, the teenagers don't immediately salute and agree to become child soldiers. Confused, they question what they're seeing. Jason says that the whole situation is too strange, and the group leaves the command center. They only reconsider after Rita sends the putties to attack them. The fight proves that the danger is real and that ordinary people could be harmed if nobody stops it. The teenagers then use the morphers because they choose to defend themselves and one another. So they're not selected because they're mindlessly obedient. The first thing they do is reject the mission. Their eventual decision matters precisely because it's voluntary. What qualities did the Rangers share? Although the show never explains why Zordon needed teenagers, it does show why these particular people were worthy of the powers. Jason was disciplined, courageous, and protective of others. Zach was confident, energetic, and capable of keeping the team's morale high. Kimberly was compassionate, adaptable, far braver than people initially assumed. Billy was intelligent, inventive, willing to confront danger despite lacking the physical confidence of his teammates. Trini was calm, thoughtful, and skilled at resolving disagreements. They were also involved in martial arts, gymnastics, dance, science, athletics, and community work. More importantly, they already cared about other people before becoming Rangers. They volunteered. They defended classmates from bullies. They supported one another, and they generally tried to solve problems without abusing power. Those qualities match the rules Zordon later gives them. They must never use their powers for personal gain. They must never escalate a battle unless Rita forces them to do so, and they must keep their identities secret. Zordon needs people who will treat extraordinary power as a responsibility rather than a reward. The original 5 possess those qualities. Their age may make them unusual candidates, but their character makes them believable ones. Were teenagers physically better candidates? The draft originally suggested that teenagers were selected because they were healthy, recovered from injuries quickly, possessed more energy than adults. That explanation is not supported by the series. Yeah, the original Rangers were physically active. Jason and Zach practiced martial arts. Kimberly was a gymnast. Trini was also a skilled martial artist. Billy developed greater physical confidence as the series continued. But Zordon never states that teenage biology makes someone better suited to morphing. In fact, later Power Rangers teams include adults, experienced soldiers, police officers, government agents, teachers, scientists, parents, aliens, people from many different backgrounds. The franchise repeatedly proves that Ranger powers are not restricted to high school students. Some Rangers are teenagers, others are clearly adults. Therefore, being young can't be a universal biological requirement of the morphing grid. The athletic abilities of the original 5 helped them in battle, but their teenage bodies were not presented as magical prerequisites. Did teenagers have fewer responsibilities? Another fan explanation says teenagers were easier to recruit because adults had jobs, families, bills, and professional responsibilities. There is some practical logic to that idea, but the show never confirms it. Teenagers have responsibilities too. The Rangers attend school, they take exams, they participate in competitions, they help at the youth center, they have families, friendships, and personal commitments. They regularly struggle to balance those responsibilities with secret battles against Rita's monsters. Their teachers and friends frequently wonder why they suddenly disappear. The show simply uses the familiar superhero convention that secret identities somehow survive despite constant emergencies. An adult Ranger would face scheduling problems, but so do teenagers. Zordon didn't choose the original team because they had unlimited free time. The series just expects the audience to accept that they can leave class whenever a monster attacks. Angel Grove. Did Zordon want people outside government control? This is one of the more interesting fan theories. Zordon possesses technology with almost unimaginable military value. The power coins allow humans to access enhanced strength, armor, weapons, giant combat machines, and energy connected to the morphing grid. Giving that technology directly to a government creates serious problems. A military might try to reproduce it. Scientists could attempt to dismantle the morphers. Political leaders might use the Rangers against human enemies rather than alien invaders. The powers could become tools of national control instead of planetary defense. By choosing ordinary civilians, Zordon avoids placing the morphing grid directly under a government, military, or corporation. And by choosing teenagers, he finds people who don't already belong to powerful institutions. That interpretation fits the Rangers' independence. They protect everyone rather than just one nation. They don't take orders from the government. They don't receive salaries. They are accountable to Zordon, their teammates, and their own moral code. This remains interpretation. The original show never includes a scene where Zordon rejects military candidates because he distrusts governments. It's a reasonable explanation for fans to discuss, not a confirmed piece of canon. Were teenagers easier to manipulate? This is where the theory becomes darker. Some fans argue that Zordon wanted teenagers because they were easier to influence. They were still developing their identities. They were more likely to accept a grand mission, and becoming Rangers could quickly become the defining purpose of their lives. Jason became the Red Ranger and team leader. Billy gained confidence through becoming the Blue Ranger. Kimberly, Trini, and Zach also formed much of their daily lives around their Ranger responsibilities. From a critical adult perspective, Zordon appears to be recruiting minors into an interplanetary war. He gives them dangerous weapons, sends them against monsters, and requires them to conceal the truth from their parents. That is understandably uncomfortable. However, the show doesn't portray Zordon as deliberately exploiting their youth. He respects their decision. He respects their choices. He advises them rather than controlling them. He expresses concern when they're endangered. He sometimes urges them to rest, think carefully, or avoid unnecessary risks. And the Rangers can surrender their powers or just leave the team. Jason, Zach, Trini, and Kimberly eventually step away for different reasons, and Zordon doesn't punish them. So, claim that he chose teenagers because they were easier to manipulate goes beyond the evidence. It can work as a dark reinterpretation. It shouldn't be presented as the hidden official answer. Did Zordon previously fail with adult Rangers? Some fan discussions suggest that Zordon may have previously recruited experienced adults and discovered that older warriors brought ambition, grudges, and political loyalties into the team. That idea is not established in the original Mighty Morphin television series. Later, comics and expanded stories introduced previous Ranger teams and additional history involving Zordon, Rita, and the Power Coins. But there's no simple canonical revelation stating that Zordon tested an adult team, watched it fail, therefore decided all future Rangers should be teenagers. The broader Power Rangers franchise also contradicts the idea that adults make poor Rangers. Many successful teams include adult members. Some work for official organizations. Others have military, scientific, law enforcement, or leadership experience. Teenage teamwork is central to Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, but adulthood itself is never treated as a disqualification. The best in-universe explanation, the strongest in-universe answer, is also the simplest. Zordon was looking for character rather than professional experience. He wanted people who were courageous but not power-hungry, skilled but not cruel, confident but capable of teamwork, independent but willing to follow moral rules. The 5 teenagers selected by Alpha possessed those qualities. Their youth may have contributed to their optimism and adaptability, but the show never claims that those qualities are exclusive to teenagers. Zordon didn't choose 5 random students because teenagers are naturally superior heroes. He selected 5 specific young people who had already demonstrated the values he wanted the Power Rangers to represent. That is the most defensible canon interpretation. Everything darker or more complicated remains fan theory. The real origin of Power Rangers. To understand the real-world answer, we have to leave Angel Grove and travel back to Japan. During a business trip in the 1980s, Hayao Saban encountered Super Sentai, Toei Company's long-running franchise about color-coded superhero teams. He saw performers in elaborate suits fighting monsters and piloting giant robots. Saban believed the concept could work for Western audiences. His idea was unusual. Instead of remaking every action sequence in the United States, he could license the Japanese footage of suited heroes, monsters, and giant robots. New scenes featuring English-speaking actors would then be filmed around that footage. This could create an American show while reusing some of the most expensive action material from Japan. Saban first attempted an American adaptation based on Shudenshi Bioman. He created a pilot, commonly known as Bioman, and spent years pitching variations of the idea. Networks repeatedly rejected it. Eventually, Fox Kids executive Margaret Lush supported the concept. Saban secured the opportunity to build a series using footage from Kyoryu Sentai Zyuranger. Mighty Morphin Power Rangers premiered on August 28, 1993. The gamble became a cultural phenomenon. The Japanese heroes were not American teenagers. The teenage high school premise didn't come directly from Zyuranger. The Japanese series followed 5 ancient warriors revived in the modern world to fight the witch Bandora, whose footage became Rita Repulsa in the American adaptation. Those characters were not ordinary students attending Angel Grove High School. Saban's production created Jason, Zach, Kimberly, Billy, and Trini for the new American footage. That meant the writers needed civilian identities who could appeal to the show's intended audience and fit between the imported action scenes. The high school setting provided an easy storytelling engine. The Rangers could deal with bullies, titians, environmental lessons, school events, friendships, and ordinary adolescent problems. Then a monster would attack, leading into the Japanese suit and Zord footage. The teenage structure therefore helped unite 2 very different kinds of television. One half was an American school and community series. The other was Japanese superhero action. Was the show really created to sell toys? Merchandising was absolutely central to Power Rangers. The color-coded costumes, individual weapons, transforming devices, dinosaur vehicles, and combining Megazord were perfectly suited to toys. Bandai produced the toy line. The franchise quickly generated enormous sales. Children wanted Morphers, action figures, masks, weapons, Zords, and anything carrying the Power Rangers logo. But reducing the entire creation of the series to the sentence Hayao Saban wanted to sell toys oversimplifies what happened. Saban first saw a television production method that he believed could work internationally. The licensing and editing model allowed his company to produce a visually ambitious action show at a lower cost than filming every battle from scratch. Toy sales then became one of the most valuable parts of that business model. So yeah, selling merchandise mattered enormously. But Power Rangers was also built around an innovative adaptation strategy. The show and toys supported each other. The series made children love the characters. The toys allowed those children to recreate the transformation and battles at home. why teenagers worked for a children's audience. Despite featuring teenage heroes, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers was primarily created for children. Teenagers occupied a perfect aspirational position for that audience. They were older than the children watching. They could drive, compete in martial arts, attend school dances, form relationships, and move through the world with more independence. But they weren't so old that they felt like parents, teachers, or distant authority figures. A young child could look at Jason and imagine becoming the Red Ranger one day. Kimberly could appear glamorous and confident while still dealing with school and friendships. Billy could show quieter children that intelligence and uncertainty didn't prevent someone from becoming a hero. The Rangers were close enough to childhood to remain relatable and old enough to seem impressive. That combination was extremely valuable. The audience didn't merely watch superheroes. They watched an imagined version of who they might become in a few years. The teenagers were also moral role models. The original Rangers were described as having attitude, but they were surprisingly wholesome. They volunteered in their community. They respected teachers. They promoted teamwork. They opposed bullying. They cared about fitness, education, friendship, and the environment. The phrase "teenagers with attitude" suggested rebellious energy. The characters themselves were closer to idealized role models. That contradiction was useful. The Rangers looked energetic and cool enough to excite children, but their behavior remained acceptable to parents and broadcasters. Each episode could deliver martial arts, monsters, and giant robots, while also reinforcing a simple moral lesson. The heroes were aspirational in two ways. Children could imagine possessing their powers. Adults could approve of their values. Why not make the Rangers adults? An adult cast could still have worked as an action series, but it would have created a different relationship with the intended audience. Adult soldiers or government agents would feel authoritative. They turned the show into something closer to military science fiction. Teenagers made the fantasy more personal. They could go from homework to saving Earth in the same afternoon. Their ordinary lives resembled the future that young viewers could imagine for themselves. That emotional accessibility also strengthened the toy fantasy. A child holding a morpher wasn't pretending to become a distant professional soldier. They were pretending that an ordinary young person could be chosen. The idea was simple. You didn't need to be born on another planet. You didn't need decades of training. You could be in school one moment and be summoned to the command center the next. The two answers don't perfectly match. The original draft argued that the in-universe and real-world explanation reached exactly the same conclusion. That is only partly true. The real-world explanation is clear. Teenage Heroes worked extremely well for a children's adventure series built around school stories, aspirational characters, and merchandising. The in-universe explanation is less complete. The show never tells us that teenagers are uniquely idealistic, more manageable, less connected to institutions, or biologically superior. What it shows is that these 5 teenagers were good people, proved capable of carrying the responsibility. Therefore, the most accurate conclusion is not that Zordon had a secret psychological strategy for recruiting minors. It's that the writers needed teenage heroes, and the story presented those particular teenagers as morally worthy candidates. So, why did Zordon pick teenagers? Inside the original show, Zordon picked teenagers because that was the team he requested, and Alpha identified 5 young people with the courage, compassion, skills, and teamwork required to defend Earth. The series doesn't give a deeper official explanation for the age requirement. Everything involving adults asking too many questions, government stealing the technology, teenagers being easier to control, or Zordon learning from earlier adult teams belongs to fan interpretation. Those theories can make for fascinating discussions, but they shouldn't be confused with canon. Outside the story, the answer is much easier. Mighty Morphin Power Rangers was a children's program. Teenagers were ideal aspirational heroes. They were relatable, energetic, visually marketable, young enough to build stories around school, friendship, responsibility, and growing up. The formula worked. Power Rangers became one of the biggest children's brands of the 1990s, continued reinventing itself for decades. Final thoughts. At the end of the day, Zordon didn't choose teenagers because the show proved they were the only people capable of saving Earth. He chose 5 teenagers because the premise required them, because Jason, Zach, Kimberly, Billy, and Trini demonstrated the qualities necessary to become heroes. Their youth made the setup memorable. Their character made it believable. Behind the scenes, the decision made perfect sense. Young viewers needed heroes who felt slightly older, cooler, and more independent than themselves without seeming completely unreachable. That is exactly what the original Rangers were. So, the next time you watch Day of the Dumpster and hear Zordon order Alpha to recruit teenagers with attitude, remember that 2 different ideas are operating at once. Inside the story, an ancient mentor is choosing 5 good people to protect the planet. Outside the story, A television production is creating the perfect group of aspirational heroes for children. Was it inspiring? Was it commercially brilliant? Was it slightly strange that an ancient alien placed the fate of Earth in the hands of high school students? Honestly, it was probably all three. Let us know what you think. Would you have accepted Zordon's offer immediately, or would you have asked a few more questions before agreeing to fight giant monsters after school?